Good afternoon. This is Mrs. Cook, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to watch how medications would be given through a G tube. You may have an opportunity to give medications through a G tube, and I think it's probably a good idea to kind of see how that's done ahead of time. However, when you get ready to do something like this, make sure that you make sure that you have your instructor watch you so that you feel comfortable about doing it, because it is a little bit different and it seems like it's a little bit scary. Before I move on any further, I must introduce you to my dog, Gracie, and she's a real sweetheart, and also to my cat, Rocky, who is in the middle of taking a bath right now. So going back to the equipment, I want to show you a few things. First, I have an abdomen, or at least part of one, over here that will be administering the medications through. I also have several little medication cups with medications alongside them. The medications will be crushed and dissolved in 5 to 10 milliliters of lukewarm water. It's lukewarm just because it makes it a little easier for the medications to dissolve. One thing, and I've put it out here, one thing that you need to be aware of is that enteric medications are not to be crushed. Enteric medications have that kind of shiny coating on them, and I'm going to kind of zero in on the blue one. I put it out there on purpose so that I could say that's the one that's not to be crushed. The other ones we are going to crush, and then you also have liquid, and of course that doesn't need to be crushed because it's a liquid. If you do have a medication that would be crushed, but you can't crush it, then the pharmacy can provide a liquid form of that medication. So don't, just because it's not available in a Pyxis doesn't mean that it can't be gotten. Couple of other pieces of equipment that I want you to see is the pill crusher. And so this would be opened up, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a few minutes. This will be opened up, and you put the pill inside, and it will be crushed. You will also have a bottle of water like this, and a syringe. And the syringe will be used with the plunger in it and without the plunger in it. And again, I'm going to show you how to do that in just a few moments. So I'm going to leave you right there. I'm going to pause the video, get everything kind of set up so that I can continue to record without holding my phone. And then we will go from there. Okay, so now that I've got my camera sister here, she's going to record while I continue to demo this procedure. So if we move over to here, I told you a little bit about the different types of medications, and we're not going to give this one because it's enteric coated. So we're going to call the pharmacy and ask for a different form, a liquid form of this medication, whatever it is. We're going to call it the blue pill. So we're just going to set that aside because we're going to refuse to give that. All right. The rest of these medications will be crushed in a pill crusher. Now, I can't guarantee that the pill crushers will all look like this, but this is a sample of one. And I'm just going to show you with a sample of this is actually an Altoid, guys, but I'm going to just show you how this works. As you twist it down, it continues to twist, and you have to kind of really get it going here. You can hear it, and it's crushing the pill. So now it becomes kind of a fine powder. All right, and I will pour this out into a cup so you can see it. And at that point, we would put a little bit of water in there, preferably tepid to lukewarm, just enough so it would make it easier to dissolve. Okay. It doesn't matter. Tap water is perfectly okay to use unless the facility says that you need to use something different. But once you have crushed and dissolved all of your medications into the water. And I'm gonna pour a little bit in here, and you only need to pour about 5 to 10 milliliters, and that would be just about this much, not very much. Again, you would let that dissolve. All right, so I'm just going to set this aside, and we're going to pretend that all of these medications that I've laid aside are now crushed in each one of these cups, and they have dissolved. So I'm just going to set this aside. All right, so we're pretty much ready to give the medications, but as you know, this tubing should be placed in the stomach. It should be in the stomach and should have been there for a while, so the placement should be verified, but you'll want to check the patient's chart to make sure that placement has been verified with an x-ray, and that the end of this tubing is in fact in the stomach. This may be hooked up to suction, or it can be hooked up to a feeding pump. So both of those, one of those things will have to be turned off before you can actually give the medication. So if it's a feeding pump, there's a little button on there that you just press and it says hold. So you just hold it, and that will keep the liquid food from continue to go through the tubing and mess everything up. This happens to have a handy dandy little cap on it. This is not typically what you're going to see when a G-tube is being used to provide a feeding. So this is just the best I could find. So we're going to pretend a little bit. But if this cap weren't on here, all right, and it was just out like this, anytime this is open, you need to bend this tubing. Otherwise, gastric secretions will leak out and get all over the place. So should you disconnect this from the tube that goes to the pump, then make sure that you just bend it so that the gastric secretions cannot come out. Now, anytime you were doing anything like this, we're going to have gloves on. So, in the interest of being perfect, I'm going to put gloves on, which I cannot now find, but that's okay. We will put them on off from the floor. So, we put our gloves on. We've got all of our medications ready, all right? And we've checked placement. We're going to check placement not only by checking the x-ray, we can double check it by listening for that swooshing sound that we talked about when inserting a G-tube, which is not the most accurate way to check for placement. And we can also check by checking the pH of gastric excretions. But assuming that everything is placed correctly, the next thing that we need to do after disconnecting it from the pump, all right, is to place our syringe with the plunger in it into this tubing. All right. At this point, we're actually going to pull out the contents of the stomach. So we're going to aspirate it. All right. We're going to aspirate it right to about 40 milliliters. All right. Let's say that that's all we get out. Okay. We want to note the amount of aspirate that we get. And then once we've aspirated it and we have measured it, we're going to push it right back in. Okay. So at that point, we're going to take this back off. In this case, we're just going to use this little cap to secure it until we're ready. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take this plunger out. All right. I'm going to come back here, unplug this again, make sure you've crimped it, unplug this again, put the syringe back in. All right. And then we're going to pour some water into this syringe. Now, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see this really well, but as I pour it in, all right, it's going to be, you're going to see it drain. Now, before it is completely out of there, I am going to take my first little bit of medication that I've dissolved in water and I'm going to pour it in. And then I'm going to let it go. It's going to continue to drain. And then I'm going to flush about 15 cc's behind that. All right, I let it go down a little bit, stop it. And the reason we're stopping it before it gets all the way to the bottom is so that we don't force air into any more air than we need to into the stomach. I am then going to pour my next medication in. Let it go, flush behind it. And I'm going to continue to do that until all of the medications are given, and then I'm going to follow it with 30 cc's more, 20 to 30 cc's more of the water. All right, once I've got that done. Now, the reason behind all of this is because we're putting stuff through this tubing. It could be sticky, it's granular as you saw it before. The reason we want to make sure that we flush it at the end with some water is to make sure all of that medication is in the patient, is not stuck in that tubing. So we have to get that all of that into the patient. So that's why we flush it even after all of the medication has been given, and a little bit more after that last medication is given. So once we've done all of that and we've done our final flush, we can remove that, put the cap back on, or you're going to reconnect it to the suction or reconnect it to the feeding. If you reconnect it to the feeding and it is a continuous feeding, then you're just going to want to push start again, and that will continue the feeding. At this point, that's pretty much all there is to the giving medications via a gastric tube. It's not as hard as it seems. I think probably the biggest thing that you need to remember is that there are certain medications that cannot be crushed. And I will tell you that when nurses get lazy, they do things like crush them anyway, or they will poke a gel-filled capsule and squeeze the inside of it out. And you've got to know what medications you're giving and which ones can be crushed and which ones cannot. Don't be lazy. Don't be swayed to do it a different way, because sometimes that will it will be suggested that you do it the wrong way. But because you are the student and we are your instructors, we expect it to be done a certain way. I also have it's not an actual checkoff sheet, but it is a procedure skills sheet that you can look at that will kind of break this all down the way that I did it. This was just a very brief demonstration. So guys, I really hope that it helps, and I will either see you in simulation, I will see you in clinical, I will see you in class. I will see you next week for sure. So have a good evening, and I hope you enjoyed.